So this little example that we're going to look at is similar to an exercise you're going to have to do in the assignment. And it involves working with some DOM animation. And you'll notice that we have an X and a Y coordinate, and that they are referring to the location of Zeppo the monkey. And we have some buttons that are going to move Zeppo around. Now you'll notice that he stops when he hits the ground, and that is because I've got that coded. Otherwise, he would just keep moving down the screen and off into infinity. So there are some limits that you're going to want to put in here. And so I actually made a limit based on the size of my background. But you see I can move Zeppo up, and that's as far as he's going to go. I can move him to the right. And you'll notice that the coordinates change. Move him to the left. I can make him stop. And then I can also make him dance, although it looks like he's having a seizure, but Zeppo is dancing. And then we'll make poor Zeppo stop. Okay, so the code for each of these buttons is similar. And so we'll walk through the code for the down button, but the code for the up, the left, the right, it's all pretty similar. So what you need to do to create the animation is you're going to have some kind of a container, and I used a div for this with an ID of container. And then I have my monkey image, and I gave it an ID of monkey so I can target it. As far as the styling goes, your container has to have a width and a height. The position should be relative because it's going to be kind of moving around. And then the image that you're animating should be smaller than the container. Position should be relative. And you don't want any kind of background color on this. And for the image itself, it is better if you use a ping that has a transparent background. Because that way, you know, it looks like the monkey is on top of the jungle here, and if the background showed, it would probably be white, and that would look kind of strange. Okay, so ideally, you would have a transparent background for the graphic that you're using. So you've defined your monkey image, you've got your styling, and then you're going to have some buttons with IDs, and then you're going to have your script. For this type of animation, set interval works really well because you're dealing with milliseconds, and so those small time intervals make your animation look smoother. Okay, so basically when I move Zeppo up, down, to left or the right, it's set interval calling a function over and over and over again to get that movement. So this variable ID is keeping track of whether set interval is on or off. So the only time set interval is actually going to get turned off is when I make Zeppo stop. Okay. So it's going to check to see if it's on or off. It also will go off if I hit a limit. So if I move him up and I've hit the limit for the top, the set interval is cleared out. Okay, so anytime I move a limit or hit a limit or I hit stop, okay, that's when it gets cleared. And this variable ID is keeping track of whether it's on or off. Position X and position Y are keeping track of basically where Zeppo is. So X is horizontal and Y is vertical, and those coordinates kind of correspond to the X and Y coordinate up here. Then, because I'm going to be using the document.getElementById monkey over and over and over again, I have assigned that to a variable. So instead of having to key this in over and over and over, I'm just going to key in the variable name instead. So I have an event listener for the down button. Okay, so when they click that, it's going to run through an anonymous function. Okay, so when they click down, it goes through this function, and I've got my ID variable. I'm calling set interval at 5 milliseconds, and the function that it's going to be calling over and over again is called frame. Okay, and then you'll notice that I'm also setting the current location of Zeppo, the Y coordinate, into position Y. Now, why am I just looking at the Y coordinate? Well, this is the down button, and if I reload this, the down button is really only concerned with vertical movement, and that is what position Y is looking at. So I don't really care if I've clicked the down button. I really don't care what the X coordinate is of the monkey. I only really care about the Y coordinate. Okay, so that's why it's setting position Y. And then set interval after 5 milliseconds, it's going to call frame. And then we start staying basically in this function. It's going to call it every 5 milliseconds until we click stop or it hits a limit. So let's take a look at what it's doing. We've got document get element by ID stop. So we have a listener for that. And if they click on that, we have an anonymous function. The entire function is here. All it does is clear out the interval for ID. Okay, so it stops the downward motion. Okay, so as long as they haven't clicked the stop button, next thing it checks is position Y to see if it's greater than or equal to 450. Okay, because that is what I determined was the bottom edge. Okay, so I wanted it to stop when it got to that particular point. Okay, so if Y is greater than or equal to 450, I clear interval. Okay, so then it stops. Otherwise, I add 1 to Y, and then I adjust the location of Zeppo. Okay, and so it's pretty much doing that over and over again until we hit that 450 mark. So if we look at the code here, okay, so you can see all of the styling here. You can see that I have my background set. And the background graphic is up here in the body. And then here's all my buttons. And then you can see that in order to update that little section up here, I had to kind of target those input boxes. And I'm just updating with element.x and element.y. Again, remember element is short for document.getElementById monkey. So it's looking at the X and the Y coordinate of the monkey and it's updating. Okay, so here we've got down. Here we've got up. So up is very similar to down. So we've got the event listener. We've got the ID. We're calling the frame function at whatever 5 milliseconds. We've got position X and Y that we're updating. We have our frame function here, checking to see if they've clicked the start button or the stop button. And for Y, because this is up, right? I wanted them to stop 50 pixels from the top. I don't want it going all the way to the top. So it's checking position Y that it is less than or equal to 50. Okay, so if that is the case, we've hit that upper limit and it needs to clear the interval. Otherwise, we're going to subtract 1 from position Y, so it goes up, okay? And this repositions the monkey, and then this updates those text boxes. Okay, so that's up and down are very similar. Right and left are focusing more on position X because position X is the horizontal position. So we've got position X and position Y. We're still calling set interval. We have a frame function. We're still checking for the stop button. And if they click on it, we're calling clear interval. Here, position X, because we are going to the right, it's checking to see if it's greater than or equal to 750. So 750 was the furthest right that I want the monkey to go. So if I hit right, when it gets to 750, it stops moving. Okay, so when it hits 750, we clear out the interval. And otherwise, if it's not at 750, it's going to add 1 to X, and it repositions the monkey, and it updates those coordinates. So left is very similar. Okay, the only difference between left and right really is the coordinate that you're checking. So when we're moving him to the left, okay, there is a point over here on the left side where he needs to stop, or he's going to be completely off the screen. Okay, so I said that point was 50. So if position X is less than or equal to 50, they need to stop moving the monkey. So we clear interval. Okay, otherwise, we're going to subtract 1 from position X, and the monkey is going to move across towards the left side of the graphic. As far as how I got him to dance, this is the code where I did this. And so I know it looks a little spazzy. So you could probably play around with the time to see if you could get it, you know, to look a little bit more like it, he's actually dancing. But for this, I'm basically adding 10 and subtracting 10. And that's how I'm getting, you know, from the X and the Y, and that's how I'm getting that movement. Okay, and that's pretty much all of the code. Okay, not super complicated to create this. Now at W3 Schools, they have another example that you could look at. I don't think this is particularly exciting. It just deals with moving a box, but it is the same kind of concept that we were just looking at.